What up, everybody out there in the YouTube internet stratosphere? I'm coming back with another video, this time on biblical preparedness involving food preparation, stockpiling food, hoarding food, all that kind of stuff. So most people at this point should probably know what I'm talking about. I seriously doubt that prepping and having like freeze-dried food stored up in your house or something is not a very new concept. So we're going to touch a little bit on that. We're going to touch a little bit on what the Bible says. I'll give you 3 really good examples of essentially, food prep. So first, let's just start with that. If we go back into the Bible, I'd say the earliest example of somebody who was in a mode of preparation was Noah. When Noah made the ark, obviously there had to have been food put on the ark. We know there was animals put on the ark, which later populated, procreated, and resupplied food on the earth. So we know that we covered in the last video that it says that Noah, being warned by God, moved with fear to prepare the ark, and we know the rest of the story. So I would say first and foremost, I would say that is the first golden example of somebody who was led by the Spirit of God, who stockpiled food or preps to a certain degree. So moving on, the next big example I would say is Joseph. Joseph interpreted Pharaoh's dream, where there would be 7 years of plenty and then followed by 7 years of lack in Egypt, and this actually spread throughout the whole entire region. It was a major famine. So the 7 years that he stockpiled food basically got Egypt and the rest of the world, through that particular famine, including it brought his brothers and, that whole situation brought them to Egypt because of the food supply. So that is a huge example of basically a dream that was given by God, even to a non-believer, interpreted by a man of God, who then acted upon it, stockpiled food for 7 years, and through that saved many people. So, in fact, you could go as far as to say that when Joseph said, hey, all this bad stuff that happened to me so that many would be saved, you could look at that largely what he was talking about there is so that I could direct the nation of Egypt to stockpile food, so that I could save many people in that region. So we all also, realize that a lot of people were led to the God of Joseph because of that event. So that is those 2 examples out of the Old Testament, I believe, are probably the greatest examples of biblical preparedness when it comes to stockpiling food. Here is a New Testament example. In the book of Acts, it is Acts, I think, chapter 11, if I remember correctly. There was a prophet who predicted a famine in the region of Antioch, and the church of was it the Church of Jerusalem? Forgive me, driving down the road, I'm not going to get all the details perfect, but essentially they sent relief to the church that was in need because of this famine. So we can imagine that this relief was probably a mix of food, goods, potentially money, so on and so forth. And it was sent by the hands of Paul and Barnabas, I believe. So that is another example in the Bible, in the New Testament, of somebody getting a message by the Spirit of God, predicting a time of lack, a famine, and then responding by, you could say, giving a stockpile of food. So those are 3 examples from the Bible. what is the greatest message, I would say, to all this when it comes to what exactly is the Bible saying? How you should, respond to these scriptures, how you should go about food preparation. First and foremost, like I said with firearms or with anything else I'm going to say through this whole video series, is first and foremost, you need to be led by the Spirit of God. Okay, that's the first thing, and that's where a lot of people in the prepper community get it wrong. They're not led by the Spirit of God. Instead, they are led by a spirit of fear, and they are not going to be in the right position, or they are going to have too much of their trust either in their own abilities or in their preps to make it through some kind of major crisis. I truly believe that, and I think there's a lot of people in the church that respond that way. So I'd say the two biggest things is this, outside of being led by the Spirit of God, is one, you need to know the crisis or event that you're going to try to have to prepare for, and you need to get clarity. It says that Jesus said that the Holy Spirit will show you things to come. So you should not be left in the dark about what you need to prepare for. So I would say it could be putting up freeze-dried food, rice, beans, so on and so forth. It could be something like that. It could be something else. For me personally, the way that the Lord directed me is to focus more on food production, which is growing my own food because it's healthier. And I believe there's a lot of lessons in growing your own produce, your own raising your own livestock, all those kinds of things. I think it just teaches you a lot of stuff it's biblical. It's a biblical lifestyle. And I believe that, unfortunately, the way everything is made up now is that we are very dependent on grocery stores. We're very dependent on the modern food chain, which is basically a global food chain, and we see how easily it can be disrupted. I think the church, if there was a crisis where suddenly they could not get food at the grocery store or something like that, they would realize real quick how dependent they actually are on a world system as opposed to God. I think that would become super clear. And here in America, we're very spoiled. We have not dealt with anything like this in like a generation. So, do I think some of this stuff is on the horizon? Absolutely. I mean, I don't even think you even need a prophetic word to figure that one out. Okay? There are, you could just follow.
After the beep, say a command.
Got my car listening to me. So I would say that that what we see going on around the world is that the globalists, all these different people, they've made it really clear that they want to essentially disrupt the food supply, because they control it. They want a global food supply. They don't want decentralized local farms. They're discouraging that. And so I would say that that's what the church should be going towards. I think churches should get back to being the leader in industries and not just responding to everything and allowing the devil to have dominion over them. So I personally think that I want to be a part of a movement of local farms, a local food distribution, and hopefully it can spread throughout the country. There is quite a bit of movement when it comes to homesteaders, but we really haven't seen it go to another level yet. And I think that with the wisdom of God, I think we can do that. So I personally believe that's where God has led me. I do have freeze-dried food. I have stockpiled food, but I do not keep, I don't have even a year's supply. I just don't feel like that's what the Lord is showing me. I feel like the Lord is showing me that I need to be more involved in food production. So that's my own personal take on the whole thing. Like I said, there's multiple ways you can look at this. The bottom line is is that you don't want to be led by a spirit of fear. You want to be led by the Spirit of God. And the other key thing I would say is that if you, however you're going to stockpile food, whether through food production, whether putting food away like freeze-dried food, or a combination of both, kind of like what I'm doing, the key is that you don't want to be a hoarder. Hoarding, I believe, is the fruit of fear. Okay? Now, preparing so that you can be a blessing to your family and providing for your family and many others, I believe, is a fruit of being led by the Spirit of God. So like it says in the book of James that, you know, if you just bless a brother and you send him away hungry, what good is that, right? So I think that if there's a time of crisis, that you can provide and help other people, either, you know, teach them how to make their own food or so on and so forth, or give them some food potentially, maybe give them some seeds, you know, just those type of things, and then bless your brother. You can become a blessing to the community around you, even in a time of crisis. Nobody's going to be a blessing if everyone's starving to death. Okay, if you're starving to death, you're not going to be able to bless other people. Now, if you're just going to completely rely on the supernatural provision, you know, I would say that you better be seeing that right now in your own walk. You better put yourself in positions where God has to show up. And I know that there are people that do that currently. They go to certain places. They even live that way in their own life. But if you're expecting for you to just live where you're addicted to the American food supply, and then all of a sudden when a crisis comes at the snap of your fingers, God's going to show up and sprinkle manna on the front yard, I think you're deceived. And I think a lot of Christians are actually in that boat. So I think, and I'm totally for supernatural stuff. I believe it. I've seen it in my own life. I've seen it in other people's life. It happens all around the world every single day. I'm not against any of that. I'm just against the idea that somehow God is like a bellhop when you live in these comforts, and then when these comforts go away, that somehow God now is just going to be Johnny on the spot. I don't necessarily believe that. I don't think that's how this works. So that would be my takes on food production, stockpiling food versus hoarding food. With all of these things, I think it's really clear, it's really simple on where we should be. I released words about what I felt like the solar eclipses that happened over a span of 7 years over America, what that message meant to the America and to the church here in America. And I do believe there will be lean times, even involving food, for a passage of time. If there is a lockdown in our country again, there very well could be more than just a toilet paper shortage, okay? Right now, our supply chain is weaker than it was back in 2020. So, like I said, I could go in that rabbit trail. I believe a lot of it's manufactured, so on and so forth. No matter how you put all these things, whether you want to get deep into the conspiracies or whatnot, I think the main thing is that you need to get a word from God on the season that you're in. You need to understand who you're really depending on. Is it God? Is it the food supply? Test it. Test these things, you know? See how well you would do if all of a sudden you couldn't go to the grocery store, and see what your life would look like. I mean, you could just a simple example of that. But whatever you do, don't get caught in fear and hoarding, because it will not lead you into the will of God. So with all that, I'll come back with another video here soon on biblical preparedness. God bless you all. Have an amazing day.